a little bit of why it's increasing at the rate it is.
So Murray's doesn't, just to clarify, Murray's doesn't charge that. It's a negotiated price between. Okay. And I'm just curious, what a lot of the costs that I'm seeing going up are environmental related. I'm just curious, is that how do we deal with landfills compared to other folks in different parts of the country and things like that?
Yeah, so that is very accurate. So a lot of it is based around the cost of environmental impact. After most of our landfill or the methane gases and things of that nature through our landfill, this is something really common up and down on the west coast and some more environmentally focused parts of the country. So there is cheaper landfill rates once you start getting out into a little bit more of the Midwest, and that's I think kind of the where a lot of the garbage will go once we're done is it'll go over the mountains over to the east to landfills that are a little bit different. Another component is we live in a very rainy part of the nation. That includes a lot of rainwater that hits the landfill. All that rainwater that seeps through, it has to be pumped out and evacuated out as leachate. So we pump all of that water back out of the landfill, and it's got to go through a treatment plant before it can go be properly put back into a system. So the leachate costs are pretty absorbent in the Northwest, and that's also a contributing factor.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Kenna.
Yeah, on that, maybe this is a question for staff more than anybody, but on that B&O tax increase, the 0.35%, I think we were having a conversation the other day at Finance, I believe it was, and that just kind of off the cuff, that's a new tax, and maybe that was kind of too broadly applied, and now we're seeing it, the effects of it on some of our services. So I'm kind of wondering if the state will maybe look at that and try to address that in this session or maybe upcoming sessions, and then how that might affect if we did approve an increase in this case for our agreement.
So asking me to predict what the state might do with the tax increase is troubling. But I would say
let's
yes.
say they do address
Let's say
it down the
if they
road.
do roll that back, then yes, when we would go back to readdress the rates next year, we'd be able to then remove that increase. And you are correct; it was a new tax the state added to all services that wasn't previously taxed on refuse collection, so it was new for them. They're just trying to pass that tax along to the customers.
Okay, Jeff, are you aware? Was the intent to apply to, disposal companies like Murray's, or was there not a
I think it was
precision of it?
a broad brush to apply it to services. What that included, I don't know that anyone looked into that level of detail, but it does apply to Murray's.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Wait. Councilmember Wilsey.
Still green.
I know, let's try it. No, it's not. It's turning off.
We're getting it.
Leave it red. Nicole.
Okay. There we go. So mine is more of just a general information, just so that you guys know, B&O tax can be donated to a local Main Street association.
We do donate to the Sumner. Oh, sorry, thank you.
No, you're good.
We do donate to the and we max out our B&O tax pass through to Sumner's Downtown Association.
Yep, perfect. Just wanted to share that info.
No, I appreciate.
It
We actually
circles back
just
through
learned.
our community.
Yeah, we just learned of this just a few years back, and so we reached out to the associations and set up the donation for it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Councilmember Hochstetter.
Thank you. So you mentioned on the landfill, there's becoming less and less space. And then you said, well, then the prices kind of go up and up with there being less space. Nothing's changing in the facility or what they're doing. Is it kind of like dynamic pricing where it's like, hey, there's less now, you got to pay more to get in? What's more behind the increase of the price besides there's less space?
So I don't want to to speculate too much into the to the decisions that were made. I wasn't in the room and I wasn't part of necessarily that process, so I'd hate to really commit to what it's about. There are operational costs that go up. It's also an effort for industrial waste and things of that nature for people so yes, dynamic pricing. Once it reaches a certain level, then all of a sudden. Training or trucking it out to eastern parts of the states for landfills with more life becomes economically advantaged. And so that's kind of part of the purpose of it from my understanding. But like I said, I wouldn't want to fully speculate on all the decisions made in that room. I wasn't there for it.
Councilmember Ranky?
Yeah, I just have a basic question on I'm looking at the rates here and stuff, but for the public, can somebody give a general synopsis of what it's going to be in March? Or
Yes, absolutely.
or just an average, if you have a 20-gallon can and a
Yep.
recycle and yard waste,
Absolutely.
just so people know what to expect coming up.
So for, I'll give just a few breakdowns. So a 35-gallon can would have an increase without the B&O tax, would have an increase of $1.53 per month. 65-gallon, which is our most common service, would have an increase of 2.56. A 95-gallon would go up 3.62. So for the residents, it would look like that for the original. And then on the with the addition to that, if you guys were to allow the B&O to go through, it'd be an additional 14 cents on a 35-gallon, an additional 19 cents on a 65-gallon, an additional 25 cents on a 95.
Councilmember Elpers?
Yeah, thank you. I just had one more question. I was looking at the, we have an exhibit that we were given that kind of shows the total increase and then compared to the current rate. So I'm noticing that the percentages, like I think you said 2.8%. And I'm looking, they're not uniform. So like some of the, I think the 65-gallon one goes up by about 4.5% and another one goes up by 2 points. So they're not exactly the same. How does that work?
It's the disposal component based on size and volume and the amount of disposal that's going to be included. So on just the service level, the 2 point I can't say the 2 point something percent, 82. Thank you. That's uniformed across the service lines, but the disposal component changes a little bit depending on volume of trash.
Okay.
Councilmember Kenna?
Yeah, this might be more of a general question about these types of agreements, but I'm wondering if there's ever an instance where we've discussed distributing these increases more to the folks that have more refuse to dispose of and share that burden more on those folks rather than the smaller carts and recycling folks. I'm just, in some cases we've talked about distributing utility rates in different ways depending upon how large your unit is, your house is, whatever that might be, square feet. And so I'm wondering if something similar would apply here to encourage folks, hey, if you can get under a certain threshold, maybe you're close to that, you can actually save money and compared to the folks that are have more to dispose of. Is there ever a discussion to that effect?
Some of that already does take place as far as, the larger service containers do cost more, and then the increase is a bit above on theirs. I mean, the
Are you talking about
percentage-wise.
commercial versus residential? Or
Commercial, to give perspective, a 1 yard commercial container would cost under the it'd be $158.46. The increase for them would be $7.11. So there is it's not quite uniformed as far as like just the pricing. It's based off the container size.
Okay, but is that applicable also to I'm looking, I guess, more about residential. Councilmember Ranky kind of was focusing on that. So I'm seeing some head nods. Does that mean that if I dispose of more trash and than my neighbor, that I'm actually paying a little bit more of that share of these increases as opposed to my neighbor?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Are you able to break that down? I guess maybe without certain factors you might not be able to do that. But is it a substantial amount, or is it?
So I want to ensure that I understand the question correctly. Are you saying the percentage increase should be more, or just the overall dollar amount increase would be?
I guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. In my mind, these increases are, let's say we have a gap. We know that, hey, our labor costs are going up, all the other costs associated with running our business. And so we're trying to meet a certain number, and these increases help us meet that certain number. And so then when we look at how to get there and who that is going to apply to help us get there, is that burden being shared, spread more evenly across everybody as a percentage-wise, or is it being focused more on those high, on those folks that have a lot of refuse versus those that don't?
It does increase more for people that have more trash than for people that have less. So for the instance, it's going to go up $1.53 for somebody that has a 35-gallon or smallest level, or the smallest containers before you start getting into the inserts. It would go up $3.62 for somebody that has a 95-gallon.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, boy. Okay. Council Member Elpers.
Yeah, I think
Well,
just-
Deputy Mayor, I
Oh,
apologize.
thank you. Okay,
Sorry.
wow. Yeah, just to follow up on Mr. Kenna's question, I think one of the things we did with the water rates, the utility rates, was that we realized that there's some folks that are on fixed incomes, and so we wanted to incentivize folks and also take care of people that have limited ability to increase their income as the costs go up. So I think, I'm not sure that was addressed in his question, but I think that was the question. I think, is there, what types of incentives and programs do you have to help people with fixed incomes, or people who are maybe they don't absorb a cost increase as well as others?
So currently there isn't a component in here for that, but that is obviously something we'd be willing to have conversations and see what ideas and work towards something along those lines. We want to be empathetic towards, the fixed incomes, things of that nature for sure.
So also to add quickly, the rates that you see here include recycling with them. So really your way, if you want to try to minimize your garbage bill, is to recycle as much as you can, fill that recycle bin full, have a smaller trash container and put less in the trash. Less in the landfill will save you money.
On that, we're also, just because that's a great point, as far as the better you can recycle, the better you can dispose of that, the better off you're going to be on being able to get into a lower container size and lower your bill. We have recently added, well, we haven't got it on yet. We've got it fully approved though through our organization. We're going to add in a community outreach position where we're going to start hosting recycle program opportunities, organics, composting opportunities to start trying to get people the information and the tools to be able to lower their disposal in the landfill.
That does lead me to one more follow-up question on that. So I think last time we talked, I feel like you were talking about the food component going in, and I feel like that was not rolled out yet to residential. I feel like there's been some changes. Can you just maybe update some of the changes in that?
Yep. So that's actually kind of where I'm saying. So we have actually fully launched that off. So you are completely, as a resident, you can put your food scraps into your yard waste bin right now. We can dispose of it like that. We've got a full commercial food waste program at this point, but kind of to why we felt a need in getting this outreach personnel is getting the information out to our public and making sure that they understand. We want to make sure we do it in a responsible way, because if we contaminate the yard waste, it will create some issues in the long run. So we want to make sure that we educate people properly. And so the way that we've gone about it right now has been in partnership with the county and some messaging on our website, things of that nature, but it really hasn't been highly effective. And so that's one of the reasons and why we've decided to go ahead and bring on a full-time staff that's job will be to work towards educating the public and making sure they understand what their options are and how to reduce their waste into the landfill.
Councilmember Evers?
Yes, I was just curious, is there any, do you foresee glass ever being allowed in our recyclable bins, or?
So the glass is a tough one. Commingled glass gets a little hard because when it breaks in the trucks, when you dump it, it embeds itself into the cardboard fibers, which diminishes the value of being able to recycle that properly. I don't necessarily see it being something that would go in the commingled itself. We do offer drop sites, but I do, where we've kind of ran into a little bit of troubles there is, there's not a whole lot of places willing to allow a box be present and collecting glass on their property, and I understand that as well, so.
Is the Elks, is that the?
Yes,
closest
that would be one of the sites. We've got several throughout the county, but this is something that gets brought up from time to time. The other option would be to have separate glass recycling door to door, which though does have a cost that would be associated with it. And I think that that's something that we're trying to make sure that we manage.
Just one other question. I try to be a good recycler. Somebody who lives in my house with me says that, like for a Coke bottle or a plastic bottle, that you can't recycle the lid.
You can recycle lids now. The old way of the lids used to come with a film on the inside. That now, if you pop them open, you'll notice that film's not there, and so the whole thing is actually recyclable at this point.
Great news. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
So a full list of all garbage rates that you would ever want to know about is included in tonight's packet. They're also available on the city's website. This rate increase will come back to council next Tuesday at your regular council meeting.
I will also, tomorrow I'll make sure I get an email out to each one of you. It'll have my full contact. Please feel very comfortable reaching out if you have questions about anything that you'd like more clarification. Maybe you'll have questions that come up after this meeting. I'd be happy to provide my time. I could swing by whatever works best for you, but I do want to make myself available, so you can expect that from me tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. On to item number 2, Transportation Benefit District Funding. I'd like to invite Courtney Luttrell, the Assistant Engineering Manager, to come up.
And don't forget Gerson.
Oh, it's not on here.
Maybe. Oh, he's coming anyway.
And Gerstmann, Singh, and there you go.
Your name didn't make it.
Not on either one of these.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Courtney Luttrell, and I'm an Assistant Engineering Manager. And tonight I'm joined by Engineering Specialist Gersimran Singh and City Engineer Elisa O'Haver. Tonight we're here to talk about our Transportation Benefit District that was voted on and approved last year, and how we're planning to spend our first year funds this year and what our plans are for the upcoming years. I've tried both. Thank you. Just to recap, I want to take a minute to refresh everybody on what the Transportation Benefit District is and how we got here. Last year, City Council formed a district, assumed the leadership, and funded it through a 0.1% sales tax, which this can only be used for transportation and more specifically, roadway maintenance and preservation purposes. Oh, no. There we go. Thank you. These funds began collection in January 1st of 2026. And tonight we'll be talking about how we're planning to spend the first year of anticipated funding, which we're looking at spending an estimated $450,000. This is less than we're anticipating to generate this year, but this is a number after discussion with our finance department that we feel is an appropriate amount to get us started. With this funding, council has allocated $300,000 towards chip seal and the $150,000 towards ADA curb ramp upgrades. I do want to note that in the past, we have not always had chip seal funding in each biennium, and we do not have a dedicated ADA curb ramp fund.
So for our chip seal project, we will be chip sealing a number of roadways throughout the city. As part of a larger project, however, we're dedicating around $300,000 of TBD funding to three major roadways that will be chip sealed as part of this funding. Academy Street, Parker Road East, and Willow Street. The sections are highlighted in blue. First one, Academy Street, will be chip sealed between Cherry Avenue and Wood Avenue. So this is a section of roadway that was originally to be overlaid as part of the Academy Street bike lane project. However, the bids came in high and this was a bid alternate, and the work was unable to be completed as part of that project. Now with these TBD funds, we will be able to preserve Academy Street and prolong the life of the pavement for about 7 to 8 more years. After chip seal, the roadway markings, including the bike lanes, will be painted as they are in current. Second one, Parker Road East, will be chip sealed between Main Street and all the way up to the north end. Per the chip seal, this roadway has received all the crack seal treatment, and dirt sections have been repaired to add structural strength to the roadway. And the chip seal will preserve the roadway, adding approximately another 7 to 10 years of life to the pavement. Third one, Willow Street, it will be chip sealed between Alder Avenue and Wood Avenue. Per the chip seal on this roadway, all the cracks have been treated with asphalt sealant, and deteriorated roadway sections have been repaired to add structural strength to the roadway. And chip seal will preserve the roadway, adding approximately 7 to 10 years of life to the pavement.
For our ADA curb ramp replacements with these TBD funds, we wanted to be able to complete the remaining ADA curb ramps that were not originally completed as part of that Academy Street bike lane project. So that would be the intersections of Sumner Avenue and Boyd Avenue. And then with the completion of those ADA curb ramps and the chip seal through this corridor, the project will essentially be completed. And then the third location that we'll be replacing ADA curb ramps is at the intersection of Willow Street and Guptill. At the intersection of Boyd Avenue and Academy Street, there are missing ADA curb ramps, of which there's just solid curb. There's no access for anyone in a wheelchair or walker or anything of that nature to safely access these sidewalks. And there are only 2 sidewalks, or missing curb ramps at this intersection, both on the south side of Academy Street. So these will both be replaced with new curb ramps, only allowing for that crossing across Boyd Avenue, not across Academy Street. At the intersection of Academy Street and Sumner Avenue, these are also missing ADA curb ramps at all 4 corners, solid curbs just like that at Boyd. These were originally scoped to be replaced as part of that Academy Street bike lane project that we've been talking about. However, as Gursamrad mentioned previously, bids came in high and these were a bid alternate, so this was removed from the scope. With the TBD funding, we'll be able to install these curb bulbs that were already designed as part of that project. So we have this design already. We'll be able to take it off the shelf and have that full build. And those are the 2 graphics that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. The top is just kind of that sketch from our plan set, and then the bottom one is a graphic generated to show kind of what that would look like. Curb bulb outs not only allow for more pedestrian visibility, but also act as a traffic control, naturally slowing traffic through the intersection as it appears that the roadway does narrow, but it does not. And then for our intersection of Willow Street and Guptill Avenue, there are 2 ADA curb ramps of the 4 that are not ADA compliant. We felt that this was an appropriate time to reconstruct these 2 that are not compliant with that chip seal that's coming down Willow Street through this area. and then also that access to the schools there. So these ADA curb ramps will be field fit, as those will also at the intersection of Boyd, just as we have done in the past with previous sidewalk projects. So these won't be designed, it'll just kind of be field fit based off of WashDOT standard curb ramps, based off of the right-of-way that we have, and then, you know, they'll be fit to the area, making sure all the slopes meet and things like that. And then just kind of a quick project timeline for both of these. Both of these are going to be combined with similar projects. So we do have a larger chip seal project that we are anticipating advertising next month in February, with construction beginning on that project in June once weather is better. And then those ADA curb ramp replacements will be combined with our upcoming sidewalk project. That does include our helping homeowner sidewalk replacements and our street tree damage replacements. That project, I am currently finishing up our design on that and hoping to advertise in March with construction beginning in May. Those ADA curb ramps that I mentioned previously that are funded through TBD funds will need to be constructed prior to those chip seal locations. So that's kind of with that staggered start on those ones. And then our future actions for this year, as previously mentioned, include that contract award of construction for both projects. But looking at longer term TBD funding, we're going to be looking at roadways such as Ryan Avenue, both the north and the south side of Main Street, as well as the Ryan Avenue North Street intersection. And then, as mentioned earlier tonight, we have not always received chip seal funding in our biennial budgets. So this TBD does allow us to continue to chip seal those roadways if we are not given that funding, and then which will allow us to prolong the life of our roads before we have to do an overlay project, which is more costly and lengthy. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Councilman Evers?
Oops, I'm not turning it on right.
Oh,
I'm new here.
I turned you on. All you got to do is, let's see.
He accidentally turned it off, Mayor, so if you want to reach down and grab him and turn his mic on, that'd work.
We did it.
Green, right?
Get it red. Turn it
Yeah,
on.
need to
Turn
hit
it on.
red. Again
Andy?
for red?
Turn it on?
Yes, turn his mic on.
How do I do that?
The button right there, green button. Yeah, push that.
Turns it off.
Okay. Push it.
Find you, scroll down, scroll down.
I have a loud voice, so.
Okay, hang
You
on.
need to wait.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go. Councilman Evers.
So, yeah, I love chip seal. I think it's awesome. So 300,000, that's just an estimate, right? Because the tax just went in January 1st, correct? Okay. So, can you tell me just what the average has been spent over the last couple of years, maybe, and on chip sealing, and then where that money came from or where it was?
You want to take that one?
So you're saying, so the chip seal money came from the biennium budget. We did one in '23, I believe, and it came from a biennium budget, and I just don't remember the engineer's estimate on that one. But I know it's
I don't recall the exact number, but I believe it was small work, so it was under 350.
it was small works, yes, 350.
And that came out of the general fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Elfers?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious on the plan on this. I think I was just curious. We have the pavement analysis that we've done in the past, and we have some areas that are like the red area. I think we have Steel Street, a little bit of Mason Street, and then a portion of Valley Avenue that are on the high priority list. So I think I just want to hear your thought process. I know the ADA ones are already designed. It sounds like that's one of the reasons. So just between like putting money aside to do design for something that's a high, like one of the red areas that are like high critical, versus doing ADA ramps, which I think are nice. I mean, can you help explain maybe the thought process behind how to prioritize that? Because I was thinking that the red items are the highest priority, and then the orange items are the second priority, and then, anyway, so I think I was just trying to figure that out. Some of it is cost, and some of it is just what you can get done. So I'm just curious, can you explain a little bit of the process, the thought process behind how you see these funds being used in that way?
Yeah, so this biennium, we also have some funding set aside for chip seal. So there is on the presentation, Jeff, if you could put that back up, please. We do have our map that shows what we are planning to chip seal for this whole summer. So these three are just kind of longer segments that we wanted to highlight and say, this is what our TBD funding is going towards. And then we do have smaller areas that are getting done as chip seal as well. So the red is what we were already planning with our chip seal funding for the biennium. And then this blue is what we're able to do in addition with this TBD funding. And then, as you were mentioning, Councilmember Elfers, we do evaluate with that PCI on, which is Pavement Condition Index, on, what we want to prioritize. And I think what you're mentioning on Valley is going to be done with our Valley Avenue overlay project that is upcoming for this summer. So that's between 410 and Mead McCumber.
Okay. And then I think do we have to use some of it for sidewalks and some of it for roads, or is there requirements behind how we use it? I'm just curious. If that's something the council should consider about, like, hey, we want to prioritize some of the streets that are really bad, like Mason Street or something like that, instead of doing sidewalks. Is that something, I'm just trying to understand if that's something we have input in, or is that something that you're like, hey, we really have to allocate money towards sidewalks because there's a time constraint and maybe there's a state law or something. I know there's some rules related to ADA sidewalks, and so I'm just trying to figure out if we put $300,000 to the chip seal, I'm excited about that. The sidewalks, I'm just kind of trying to decide if we need to give feedback on, is that the second priority, or is that a mandatory priority, or should we?
Yeah, so depending on our surface treatment option that we pick, we have to do ADA curb ramp upgrades if they are not meeting ADA standards. So if we were to do like a slurry seal, microsurfacing, or an overlay, and we are going through an intersection that does not have ADA compliant ADA curb ramps, then those have to be brought up to compliance. So with this, we just kind of also wanted to do a little bit of both to show how we can take this TBD money and how far it can go based off of our different needs, per se, for ADA curb ramps versus chip seal. But there is opportunity to kind of figure out exactly how we want to use this money.
Okay, and then one final question on the curb ramps. That we're doing a lot of those curb ramps. They are really nice. And I know with the roads we have that great graph with how fast you maintain them. How do the curb ramps work? Are they more maintenance than a normal sidewalk, or are they less maintenance, or how does that look long term?
Yeah, so about 2-ish years ago, our interns went around the whole city and inspected every single ADA curb ramp that we have. So we do have data that tells us how many compliant curb ramps we have versus non-compliant, versus also intersections where we have no curb ramps. So those ones that you saw at Boyd and Sumner Avenue, those are considered as no curb ramps. So I do have those numbers if you'd be interested in those. And so we were just kind of picking locations that have, high traffic by schools, an area, also in areas that don't see a lot of improvements throughout the city. So our low equity index that I've mentioned before on sidewalk projects. And that's kind of how we also pick our street tree damage locations. So not focusing more on the downtown core that does see more action per se than other places. So just kind of trying to spread that out throughout the city.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kenna.
Yeah, Courtney, I'm going to pull on that string of the ADA ramps again just to learn a little bit more. Can you describe the ADA transition plan that the city, has to meet at some point? I'm just curious about kind of Councilmember Elfers, Deputy Mayor Elfers, going to have to get used to that one, about his question and how we determine when to do curb ramps, versus just focusing on the chip seal or the pavement. Are we obligated to do curb ramps a certain amount, every year or every few years? I know, as you described, if we kind of touch a project that is coming up to something that's non-compliant, we do have to address that. That makes total sense. But I know lots of cities are way behind on their transition plans. And so I'm just curious, I would be curious in the data you talked about from the intern project, but just like when are we required to do those? If it's not a part of another project, like or are we just trying to say, according to these other factors, we would like to go to these neighborhoods that have less work and improvements done in their area? Or is there some other piece that makes us address those when it's not part of another project?
Right now, there are no like hard set requirements on, you have to replace this many ADA curb ramps. However, there are, have been cities sued in the past to do these requirements. So just trying to get ahead of that. And then making sure, like you've mentioned, making sure that we are taking care of those ADA curb ramps, if we are, replacing sidewalk that butts up to one. So with the helping homeowners, if we're replacing sidewalk for a homeowner with that 50/50 cost share program, and they happen to be on a corner lot and that curb ramp is not compliant, we're gonna take care of those as well as part of that, not with that 50/50 though, that's a cost incurred by the city. And then, same with, if we're doing an overlay project, like the Valley Avenue overlay project we mentioned, that's gonna have some ADA curb ramp upgrades associated with it. And then also with the Washington Street reconstruction project upcoming, that will also upgrade some curb ramps. So we're not really trying to go out and pick out curb ramps if we're not damaging them. If there is a ramp, but it's not compliant, that's better than no ramp, because people are still able to access the sidewalk. While it might be a steeper slope, at least there is the ability to get up onto the sidewalk as if there is just a hard curb.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hochstetter?
Yeah, Courtney, can you help me understand as a resident when I'm looking at the ramp that's at Willow? And I see a ramp, but it sounds like it's not ADA compliant ramp. What's the difference?
Yeah, so there's ADA standards from WashDOT, and there's different cross slopes, landing pad lengths, the wings, the gutter between the roadway and the sidewalk. There's a very great multitude of measurements that have to be taken, and if any one of those is above or below that with that threshold that they allow, it's considered to not be compliant. So I can find out the specifics of why that curb ramp is not compliant if you're interested, but even having not the right sized detectable warning surface can make a curb ramp non-compliant, or if there is no detectable warning surface but all the other measurements check out, it can be considered non-compliant. So there's a bunch of different reasons that a curb ramp may not be considered compliant.
Okay, so as I'm learning more about this, so that ramp goes in and there was ADA regulations then, we just didn't meet them when we put that in?
They might have met the regulations at that time of installation. So they were most recently updated in 2012. So they've changed over the years, which is why we do have a bunch that are not considered to be compliant, because they did meet the compliance needs at the time, but as those have evolved, they are now considered to be non-compliant.
Okay, so then there's obviously an order of priority. That's near a school. That's a crossing with Maple Lawn, Sunrise Middle School. One thing I'd like to put on the radar is there is a old sidewalk without a ramp, ADA compliant ramp, right at the entrance of the high school on Mead and Maple. And I only bring this up because I was at the homecoming parade and I saw a lady come to that and she couldn't get off the curb, so she turned around on her motorized wheelchair, went all the way back. It's a corner lot, so the closest she could do is go 2 houses over, go down their driveway, then go on the street, and then keep going. So I would like that flagged or as important of interest, to something to be thought of as you do this in the future. The other thing I want to add is the bump outs. I see that when you do the ramps, you add the bump outs, right? Is that what they're called? To make sure.
Curb outs.
There we go. As I'm learning the terminology. So with that, I see that would go on Academy. And I have heard some feedback that there has been some increased speeding because there was some stop signs moved, I think, on Cherry. And so now it's more of a straight shot. So I just want to, for the record, say I'm a fan of that because, like you said, it's perceived at narrowing. I know we're close between a park, we're right off Main Street, we're, kids going to school that way. So, I mean, I am a fan of those bump outs, especially in those straightaways as we've removed some of those stop signs. So I think that's great. And I think I had one more thing here. That's it. Thank you, Courtney.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3, council vacancy process. I'd like to call on City Administrator Jason Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll wait just a moment for the presentation to come up. You guys are doing a great job with the mics tonight. I know it's a learning curve. You guys,
Except for me, apparently. I wasn't trying
You'll
to
get
do
it.
that for me.
okay, so we're going to talk about the council vacancy appointment process. What we're talking about tonight is the rules are all governed by either state law or your council rules. First off, I should start, the reason why we're doing this is we have a vacancy because Mayor Bowman was Carla Bowman was elected to mayor, which then vacated her council seat. So like I said, the process here is covered by state law as well as your council rules, which is Resolution 1695. So state law says that in order to hold public office, you have to be qualified, which means you must have continuously resided within the Sumner city limits for a minimum of 1 year prior to appointment. And you also must be registered to vote here in the city of Sumner. Now, this is a short-term appointment, which means that we are filling a seat that was vacated in year 3 or 4. So that means it's a 2-year appointment just for the last 2 years of this term. So this position, once appointed, will be held by the appointee through the certification of the general election in November of 2027. So the process set forth in your rules is you must advertise, there's an application, there's an interview, there's an appointment process, and swearing in. So I'll go through each one of these. So the dates listed on all these slides is what staff is recommending. And obviously, we're here tonight in case you want to make any changes to your rules or process. So we're recommending you start advertising on January 15th. It is required that it's posted on our website, as well as the newspaper of record, which is the Enumclaw Courier-Herald, as well as posted notice here at City Hall. Traditionally, and what we will also recommend this time, is we will also put it in our e-newsletter, as well as social media posts on X, Facebook, and Instagram. The application period under your rules says it needs to be open for 30 days from the date of posting, so that would make it closing on February 17th at 5 p.m. The application includes some basic demographic data, as well as supplemental written questions and a resume. Endorsements or letters of recommendation or other materials are not accepted. And applications and supplemental materials will be distributed to the mayor and council prior to your interview meeting, as well as posted electronically following the PDC rules for disclosure. And those will be posted on our website. So the supplemental questions that you have used previously for the written application are listed on the screen here, and I'm going to read them in case anybody in the audience can't see the screen. It's, what is your vision for our city and community? Number 2, what are 3 highest priorities and or issues you believe the city needs to address, and how would you propose the city address those? What strengths would you bring to the council? And number 4, explain your current and past community involvement and or service on city, nonprofit, or public boards, committees, task forces, or commissions, and how this has contributed to the Sumner community. And then how is this relevant to the position of Sumner City Council member? At the February 23rd study session, you'll hold interviews. The order is set by random draw. And applicants not being interviewed may be asked to leave the room, but that's not required. We've never had an applicant refuse to not be in the room during the interviews, but it is just a recommendation. The questions are provided to the applicants in advance so they can prepare. And then council may limit the response time based on number of applicants. Once again, not in your rules, but historically we've limited those interview periods to 5 minutes. Not including any follow-up questions that are meant to be of clarifying nature. The interview questions we've used for the last couple times, these were updated, I think about 2 years ago. So number 1, why do you want to serve on the city council? Is there something in particular you hope to accomplish while serving on the council? Number 2, as a council member, you only have the legal authority to cast 1 of 7 votes. What is your philosophy on how to build consensus or majority support for a program, policy, or regulation? And number 3, is there anything else you would like to add that would help us to get to know you a little bit better? At the March 2nd regular council meeting, council will accept nominations. I will say at any time, either on the 2nd or during the night of the interviews, council does have the option to go into an executive session to discuss the qualifications of the applicants However, no straw voting or anything similar to that can occur in that executive session. So when you get to the nomination period, there is a call for nominations. No second is required, and then nominations must be closed by a motion, a second, and a majority vote of the council. Then there's an opportunity for the public to provide their comment, limited to 2 minutes per person. And then you move on to your voting. And the voting is done by roll call, and the appointments do require a majority vote, and you may have to vote multiple times in order to obtain that majority vote. In the rare case of a tie, the mayor does have the ability to break the tie by casting the deciding vote. And once again, you do have the opportunity for executive sessions anywhere during the process. Council may postpone the election to a date certain if a majority vote is not received. I will say, though, that under state law, I forgot to mention earlier, you do need to appoint somebody to this position within 90 days, so essentially the end of March. Failure to appoint somebody by the end of March will turn this over to Pierce County Council, who then gets to appoint somebody to the role. And then on the March 16th regular council meeting, you'll be able to swear in the new council member that you appointed. This is just the summary of the dates, and I'm happy to answer any questions or lead a discussion on this.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Kenna.
Yeah, Jason, just a couple clarifying questions before we probably get into the substance of it. Number one, does staff do any sort of screening, or the mayor do any sort of screening of applicants? Or if we get 50 applications, do we have to entertain all those in front of us?
The way the rules are currently written, the only screening we do is we verify that they have a Sumner address, and then we send it to the Pierce County auditor, who verifies that they're a registered voter. Other than that, there's no screening.
Okay, so, but potentially in the future, if we wanted to change the rules or modify those, we could, but not likely within this time frame.
Correct.
Yeah. And then secondly, as council members, as the mayor, what are the rules governing how we interact with potential applicants, or once we get into the stage of people applying, are we still allowed to have conversations with those folks, or do we kind of have to maintain our borders around that?
You know, think of it as a job application process. So once the applications are received, you know, our city practice is we don't start engaging with applicants in the process. So you need to be careful of that. And then you also need to be careful of any sort of Open Public Meeting Act violations.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Councilmember Evers.
So I guess I'm getting back to like the voting. So say we come out and vote 2-2-2, would we just have a revote right then, and then if our first vote is 3-3, does the mayor at that point break it, or I'm just curious.
So in that case, if you have a 2-2-2, you would vote again to see if it changes, and if it doesn't change, the mayor then could break the vote, break the tie.
Councilmember Kenna.
Yeah, so I'll just address my interest in maybe adding some questions. I believe probably to the interview portion. I think the supplemental questions we have in the application process probably are fine, but I did supply a few questions to the council and to you, Jason, as well. And is it more appropriate to read those out into the record, or how should we go about that? And then am I making an actual proposal of these at a study session, or how do we address that piece of it?
You know, because we do have some tight timelines, you know, the latest that we could change the questions is really right when the applications are due, you know, so the February 17th date. Looking at our schedule ahead, we don't have a lot of study session time available to add this back onto agenda. So if you're interested in changing the questions, I would encourage you to do that tonight and have that discussion. Regarding your question whether they should be read into the record, yes, because the public watching at home as well as in this room do not have access to those, so it'd be appropriate to read them.
All right, Mayor, if you'd be so kind, can I read these? Should we do one by one and discuss, or should I read them all four at a time?
Maybe we should start with the discussion of is there a consensus that you want to change the questions? And then if so, move into it. That'd be my recommendation.
Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Elfers.
I think there's some questions, I'm looking at the questions, we haven't read them yet, but a couple questions I think that could be redundant, that I think these are actually maybe better than some of the questions that are on here. So I'm not sure that I'm in support of just adding additional 4 questions, but I do think these would improve some of the additional questions, and a few of them are new. So I think I'm open to making a few adjustments. I think it's not just new questions. I think some of them are just improving existing ones. That's my opinion.
Anyone else? Okay.
So Mayor, I look to you. Do you want to have a discussion of changing the questions? You have 2 people that have expressed interest.
Only 2? Anybody else interested? Wait. Councilmember Ranky?
I'm not opposed to it, but I see like on the first one is there's 3 qualities. I think that's kind of redundant, like Deputy Mayor Elfer said. I guess just getting it tonight, we just got these tonight handed to us. So, I mean, it'd be nice to look at them and at least go over them. I mean, I'm just starting to look at them right now, so. I'm not opposed to having additional questions, I guess. It's just going to prolong the interview process too, but I think it's okay. So this is a big decision to select somebody to, fill the next 2 years. So I'm not opposed to it. I just want to make sure we're not doing redundancy, asking the same questions over in a different form or a different way, but that's all I have.
Councilmember Hochstetter?
Yeah, I don't think I'm on yet.
You're not, you need to shut it off and let me turn you on over here. Okay. Councilmember, yes,
Just scroll down and
Yeah.
then touch it.
yeah, got it. Councilmember
There we go.
Hochstetter.
Now we're live.
There you go.
So just to clarify, these are not in a full just replacement of what the current one are, or these are in addition? And that's one question, I guess. The other thing is, like Councilmember Ranky said, I mean, it's a big decision. It's someone who will serve the community in an important role for the next 2 years. So clarifying the questions and making them as targeted as we can as we select someone for this, I'm all for considering improving it.
Councilmember Kenna?
Yeah, and to your point, Councilmember Hochstetter, not to necessarily replace the ones we have, more to supplement them. That's at least my idea. I'm open to ideas, or if people have other ones on top of these, that's fine. I think the intent or the interest behind some additional questions is really, we've got the application questions, and those will be in writing. Those will be posted on the website for the public. But then when we get to the interview stage, speaking as somebody who went through this process, I felt like it was really quick. We had a 5-minute time limit. If you're a member of the public who just comes to the meeting or you watch it on TV, you see somebody for a couple of minutes and that's all you get from them, and then they're, appointed. And so I would love to have a little bit more, despite, we could have, a number of applicants, and we do have to go through this process fairly, but I would like to have a more robust interview process, see how somebody does here in front of the council, in front of the audience, and give them more time and space to articulate their vision. I feel like in a paper resume and application question, you don't get all of that.
So, that's all right. Deputy Mayor Elfers.
So I'm going to just go ahead and show my thoughts. So there's a couple of questions on the supplemental questions on your presentation, if you are able to bring that up, just so I can kind of compare.
And if we're going to get into details
getting too
on
much, yeah.
specific questions, I think it would be appropriate for somebody up there to read what Councilmember Elfert or Kenna put in.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to do that. So on supplemental question, go to the supplemental questions. I think that's where I see the overlap.
Sorry, wrong way.
Okay, so supplemental question number 2. I think the one that is on Councilmember Kenna's It says, what are your top priorities and why you believe your set of experience can serve the city well on these priorities? So I'm looking at supplemental question number 12. In number 2, it says, what are the 3 highest priorities and or issues you believe the city needs to address? So I think the question is very similar to that. It has some additional, expands on that a little bit. So I don't know that it needs to be a separate question. I think it could be a modification of supplemental question number 2, because it talks about your top priorities and giving examples of your experience connecting to that. And then supplemental on another one of his questions says, please name 3 qualities a council member should have and share examples of these qualities in your personal and or professional life. I think that is also very similar to supplemental question number 3. What strengths would you bring? So it's just more specific. I think I don't think it's a bad question. I think it's a good question because it asks for specific examples of qualities. So it's basically taking question number 3, what strengths do you bring? And it's saying, can you please provide specific examples of these qualities in your personal and professional life? So I think that's a fair question. But I do think it's really similar to question number 3 already. And then on number 4, on the supplemental questions, the one that's similar to that says, please describe any form of public or community service you have, expanding on written questions you provided council. So I believe this is, number 4 talks about past community involvement and service on committee, nonprofit, public boards, and this question is very similar to that. I'm not sure it's necessary. And then the final one, which I think is actually, it's really a good one to add, in my opinion, it says, council matters sometimes mean making hard decisions that may not be publicly popular, may go against staff or council recommendations, or even your personal perspective. Can you describe your approach to these difficult decisions while providing any similar examples from your experience? So that one I don't think is addressed in any other question. So to me, that's the only really specifically unique question that I like the idea of adding, or at least something similar to that, because it talks about decision-making and how do you handle unpopular decisions. But the other ones, I think, there really could be incorporated into the existing questions, in my opinion. That's right.
Okay, so is everybody in agreement with that? Does this satisfy Council Member Kenna, what you are thinking?
Deputy Mayor Elfers, please correct me. I just want to say back what I think I heard. So you're maybe thinking the question about decision-making and dealing with, hard decisions. That one could be added into the interview questions. The other questions could maybe be combined or melded with existing questions as they are. But just in the application materials, or do you want to also bring those not only in the application materials, but also forward to the actual interview?
Deputy Mayor Elfers? I'm getting there.
Yeah, this is funny. So if we have a conversation, we have to go back and forth. Okay. So the questions that that's a good clarification. So the questions you have are interview questions on this paper. So I was assuming this would be during the interview, so we'd interact a little more with them. The application, I didn't have any idea that this would be a part of the written application change. I think that would be a little more difficult.
Okay, so are you suggesting, Councilman Kenna, that you guys take the proposal you brought and actually make those part of the questions with the supplemental questions? Councilman Kenna.
No, that's how I interpreted what the deputy mayor had mentioned. So I am fine with incorporating these into the interview questions just for when they're here on site in front of us. I do think maybe if you all feel that, like the question on priorities, if that's really covered in the application, we really don't, it's almost one for one, we really don't need to address that. I'm happy to take that one out. Maybe once you get up to 5, 6 questions, it can get quite lengthy if we have 10 applicants, for example. So I understand that aspect of it, but maybe I'll kind of reimagine what I've got here. I'd like to propose that we add in the decision-making question, and then I know the service question about community or public service is incorporated into the application. If folks feel like they want that expanded upon more in the interview, because one thing I'll point out, and Jason, you can clarify this, the follow-ups can be tricky. If somebody says something unique in their interview and we want to address that and point to specifically that, this is my understanding, so please do correct me, but we can ask that question. But if we start to ask too broad of a question, that question then has to be applied to all the candidates that come before us. So we really, in my mind, we get one shot without getting too much into the weeds with candidates and then having to go back and ask you guys, can we ask this question? Can we not ask this question? Am I understanding that correct?
You are, and I'll just say it a little bit different way so everybody understands. During the interview process, you can ask clarifying questions. So if they say, I don't like red cars, right? You can say, please tell me more about that. What you can't say is, what is your position on cars? And if you're not asking that to everybody else. So just think about it, asking a little bit of clarifying to draw out that little bit rather than a broad question that you're not asking uniformly.
Okay, makes sense. So just to go back, I'll propose we add the decision-making question, and then and the service question. I really do think it would be important to have a dialogue about somebody's public or community service, and then if they mention something we want to pull on a little bit more, we can specifically dive into that. If we leave that one off, it then becomes hard to follow up on that in person. So those are the two I would say I'd like to propose that we add into the interview portion, not the application portion of it.
Deputy Mayor Elpers.
Okay, I think I'm understanding a little bit better. So what I'm hearing is that if they put an application in, they have up to 2-page limit on the application, and then in the interview, I'm assuming, and maybe this is a good question to ask to make sure I'm not assuming wrong, is that we can ask any questions we want that have to do with their actual written application to clarify that, even if it's not one of the interview questions. Because that would, to me, that would really broaden the ability to say, hey, on your application, you mentioned this. Can you please elaborate?
Correct.
That's something you could do during the interview process?
Yes, you can.
Okay, because that's what I'm thinking. That way, if you have different questions and you don't include certain ones in the interview that are on the application, you are not overstepping by clarifying that. So in that case, as long as that's appropriate, then I think just that I'm in support of that, the 2 questions.
So to clarify.
Clarify, yes.
Here's what I'm hearing. Add the question about service and add the question about decision-making under the interview questions. The other 2 on the sheet provided are already adequately covered in the written application questions. Another point of clarity I'd just like to make is number 2 redundant of the decision-making, because they have the same theme about decision-making.
Councilmember Kenna.
Yeah, great question, Jason. I saw this one through the lens of my first year here on the council and the competing priorities for the public, maybe recommendations from staff, your own personal perspective. I didn't see that totally in that question number 2 that's here on the screen. I saw pieces of it, but I wanted to maybe more specifically call out, the various ways, directions that were pulled and how we have to make decisions, going forward. So I see them as just slightly different and something I'd still like to pull on a little bit more in that interview.
So then a follow-up, do you still need question number 2? If it doesn't serve the purpose that you're looking for?
I still think there's value in question 2. I mostly see that as a consensus building aspect of it versus the proposed question I've got here about kind of competing interests. And I see those as 2 very important things, but distinct enough things that I want to be able to talk to candidates about. That's in my mind how I see it, but I'm open to other ideas.
So point of clarification then, would it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total questions?
Yes.
So then I would like to offer up that right now the time frame is 5 minutes. So now you need to look at the time frame you feel you would have to ask and get answers back on these questions.
Yeah, and I will say, historically, we've had somewhere between 8 and a dozen applications every time we do this. So let's just say you have to up it to 10 minutes, you're somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours quite easily, because there's a transition time and setup. That should be a deterrent. I just want to make sure that council understands what they're.
So does everybody buy into that? Councilmember Evers.
I would just say, at the risk of having a 5-hour interview session, I do agree with Councilman Kenna that I would get personally a lot more from somebody sitting right there and talking to us rather than just, a resume. Or I think you can learn a lot just from watching somebody, talking to them.
Councilmember Kenna.
Yeah, I'm in support of some kind of a limit, and Mayor Bowman, in terms of whether that's, if you set it at 10 minutes, we can't, my understanding, Jason, is we can't change these rules too late in the game. So if we say it's 10 minutes, if we make that decision in the application process and then we get 50 applications, we still have to hold to that time limit. Obviously, some candidates may not need that whole time. We may not need that whole time, but we kind of do need to make that decision earlier than at the last minute when we know our applicants. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, your rules are silent on this, so you could wait and determine whether it's 5, 7, 10 minutes after we see how many applications you get. I would just be cautious. If you're going up to 5 questions, 5 minutes isn't enough. So it's going to have to be at least 7 or 10 minutes at that point anyway.
So just bouncing off of that, then I would just say I'm open to a 10-minute limit. And if we get to that stage and we know we have a certain amount of applicants and it's, we actually really can have to set it at 7 or something like that, then we'll just have to be diligent with our time and get the best out of it. But yeah.
All right, everybody's good with that? All right.
Got what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so on to item 4, ordinance 2938, donation, naming rights, and sponsorship. I would call on Deputy City Attorney Doug Ruth. Thank you. And Communications Director Carmen Palmer. That's good.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'll wait until it gets loaded up there, and for your listening pleasure, oh, it's already up there. Okay, great. So the last item on the agenda today is an ordinance dealing with donations to the city. The council has seen this a couple times already, but because we have new members and it's been a couple months since it was before the council, we're going to give a full background. And I'm going to start with, I went the wrong way. There we go. Start with the legislative path up until this point. And so it was introduced back in the fall at a study session. And at that discussion, there were some concerns expressed with the ordinance. So it was referred on to a finance committee, kind of took a step back. And I think the finance committee had a good discussion about the legislation. There were no changes, so it was moved on to the agenda for a council meeting. But after discussion at that council meeting, further consideration was moved or was postponed so that members could investigate the past fundraising practices, naming rights practices, and look at some other city codes. And that brings us to tonight. It was continued to the study session tonight. I will mention that prior to this meeting, the mayor and staff met with Councilmember Elfers to address some of the concerns, and I think that was a productive session. If we have a productive conversation tonight, it's already scheduled for consideration at the regular council meeting on the 20th, and of course we can postpone that as well. Sorry, I don't know my left from my right. All right, so along that pathway, the legislation did pick up some changes. I want to cover 2 of those because they're changes to the ordinance that the council last saw. So in section 1C2, there's a new provision, that would be this, the 2 there, that adds a requirement for staff to seek feedback from the Finance Committee for any substantial fundraising campaign. So this provides some oversight for the council, gives them a little foreknowledge of maybe some donations or naming rights resolutions or agreements that they're going to see in the future. The second provision is in Section 2, and it aligns the approval dollar amounts between city administrator, Finance Committee, and council for generic donations with those for naming rights. So we had a little bit, previously the naming rights had a little different cutoff, but now it's the same as all donations. So 0 to 5,000 would be under the city administrator's purview, 5 to 50 would be under the Finance Committee, and above 50 would be under council's authority. Now I'll mention, this is not for naming of parks and buildings. That's always under the council's authority. This is just for portions of parks, parts of the interior of a building, so maybe the playground or a room in a building that somebody is seeking, a donor is seeking to name, those would be under the dollar amounts. So those are the major changes. And for the rest of the background, I'm going to turn it over to Carmen Palmer because she has done fundraising for the city of Sumner as well as through her career for other large entities. So she knows the mechanics of fundraising. She also knows the history that was kind of the genesis for this legislation, some past fundraising. And so I think she's in a better position to give you a little bit of background on the purpose of this legislation and why you're seeing it tonight. So I'll pass the clicker to her.
Pass the baton on. Hopefully I go the right direction. Ha-ha! So I just wanted to go back to the purpose of this ordinance, and that's actually to increase the guardrails around any future donations. It's been pretty, I'll go into a few more details coming up, but in the past it's been pretty loose. The code was pretty minimal that exists today without this ordinance. And that just creates different situations each time. And it's that uncertainty that creates problems. So the purpose of this ordinance is to actually add guardrails. I think there was some conversation worried it was to remove them. It's actually the other way around. It's to add more structure to this process so that everyone gets treated the same and fairly across projects and across time. So first, I just want to go to why the donations are important. Why don't we just do it all in the public with public dollars and not worry about private donations? Your public dollars are very limited. This is from your budget in brief. Everything has a limit on it, not the least of which is it's the taxpayers' hard-earned money. My apologies, I realized today I added this slide before I updated the sales tax chart for Sumner to reflect the addition of the Transportation Benefit District. So this is the last time you'll see it without the TBD. It's actually already online with the TBD. But property taxes are limited at 1%. Sales tax is limited. Everything's limited. So donations are a way to reduce the burden on the taxpayers while still getting buildings, parks, playgrounds, that sort of thing that everybody would like. The second is one you might not have thought of, and that's when we go out for grant funding. Sometimes what we hear is, well, don't worry about donations, go out for grants instead. The first thing those grants look for or even require is matching donations. There was a neighboring city, we will not name them, who actually missed a grant opportunity with the state through the Recreation and Conservation Office, and the state gave them the feedback of, well, we didn't see any private donations. So grants are a great funding source as well, but I will tell you whether they just want to see other funding. On the right is a sample from the Pierce County lodging tax that helped fund the construction you're seeing right now with Hops Alley and Heritage Park. They want to see our other sources of funding. Sometimes they ask it like that, and then if you have no other sources of funding, you tend to get graded low. Sometimes it's actually a requirement, and they say we want to see matching funds, or we want to see a 2-to-1 matching fund. And you can understand the thought process there. Why should the state invest their limited tax dollars if no one in our community is willing to pony up any money to bring this amenity to life? This was a quote from Virginia Anderson when we were building McCall Hall. This is a project I had the honor to work on, raising the private funding. And it's funny because once someone reminded me of the first 2 words of this quote, I could still say it by heart, but public support makes it possible. Private support makes it spectacular. Together we invest in a future for us all. So something like McCall Hall or Heritage Park or anything we would like, we might be able to get by on the bare minimum with tax dollars, but is it really spectacular? Is it really a place to gather and be proud and draw people in, just as McCall Hall continues to do? There are other famous examples, which, by the way, I'm not sure people realize. McCall Hall is owned by the Seattle Center, which is a department of the city of Seattle. So bigger size, but still a city building that earned over half of its funding from private donations. Not alone, Yankee Stadium is a partnership with the city of New York. Another one at Seattle Center, Key Arena, how I knew it, now Climate Pledge Arena. One at the city of Tacoma, they own the Pantages Theater. Now that was named from the builder, Alexander Pantages, but if you go inside the Pantages Theater, you will see a lot of names on lobbies and seats and plaques and all sorts of things that they've done over the years with renovations. There are examples here in Sumner. This is not new, even within the city of Sumner. The Bill Heath Sports Complex, that was renamed in honor of Bill Heath, who led that fundraising campaign for Sumner Rotary. Even when it was the Daffodil Valley Sports Complex, I think that one had over 1,400 donors or some incredible number that helped get that built. Reuben Knobloch Heritage Park, the very park that's one of our examples that we're talking about, that was originated with a gift in the will of Reuben Knobloch. Even a recent example we've talked a lot, Lucy V. Ryan Park, the stipulations in the deed that be named after her, with that land being given to the city. And I'll talk a little bit more about City Park. I don't know if everybody knows about that one. We know it more often as Loyalty Park. So this is a good example. There's a wide spectrum of support, and what I'm building is for the need for a little bit more clarity. Still giving us flexibility, but just a few more guidelines. Sometimes we name things as an honor and no money is exchanged. To my knowledge, Mr. Siebenthaler did not give money to have Siebenthaler named after him. He was big in Boy Scouts and recreation, and the city chose to name it in his honor. I did learn with some information from Dale Losif, we've been misspelling it this whole time. His name was SIEB, so when we can find the funding to flip the signage at some point, we'll try to correct that. Another example is streets get named after people. Zender Street was named for the Zender family that had their farm out there. Loyalty Park, I'm not sure how many people know the history of that, so this is related to this next box. L.F. Thompson gave the land years ago. And it was named City Park for decades. We are very original sometimes in our names here in Sumner. City Park, Bridge Street Bridge, I'm noticing a trend. But in the 60s, actually, it was a very controversial decision the council took in response to the Vietnam War protests to rename it Loyalty Park. That actually got them a lot of feedback for making that selection. Again, not honoring any specific person, that was honoring, I guess, more of a feeling or a consensus they felt. But that original name, it's not called Thompson Park. That original gift was given without any name. I already talked about the sports complex. There's also been smaller examples. When Leroy Goff retired from the council, the city gave him a bench that's out on Main Street with a plaque in his name. Sometimes the donation is to the city. It's not necessarily maybe something we were either planning to create or wasn't even on our radar, but a donor has said, hey, I'd really like to give this to you. Again, City Park, that was so long ago, I don't know whether the city requested or he felt the need to donate that. A more recent one is Quinnell Park. There was that weird piece of land that the Quinnell family owned down in the River Grove neighborhood, a neighborhood that does not have any type of park, and until we connect it with the pedestrian bridge, does not have easy access to a park. One of our staff talked to the family and they said, sure, there's nothing, they felt they agreed and wanted to give that land to the city for a future small park and asked that it be named in their family's honor. Another one is around the corner here. When Tim Hyland passed away as an active city employee, a number of private individuals wanted to fund a bench with the Broom artwork on it. Sometimes it's a partnership. We know we want to get something done and we formally enter into a partnership with private organizations to make it happen. Daffodil Valley Sports Complex, I kind of referred to this already. That was a partnership between the city and Sumner Rotary to get that done. Heritage Park was a partnership the first time in '95 with the city and the Historical Society and lots of donors. One that comes around every year, Community Summit, that's a partnership the city has with multiple organizations led by the CFF, the Communities for Families. And the city helps contribute to that as a partnership, but that's not our event. Same thing, famous is Friends at Your Metro Animal Services, Animal Shelter, I believe they had the S stand for. So they are the nonprofit that raises funds for our government-run Metro Animal Services. Sometimes there's gifts, I just want to acknowledge this, that are given with little or no recognition. These are a lot of our drives, right? We just finished Toy Box with a lot of financial and in-kind donations from the public. We've done food and hygiene drives. I don't know if people here realize how much the Metro Animal Services Shelter relies on donations of dog food and kitty litter and all sorts of things that get dropped off. Sometimes even kids have their parties, and then instead of birthday presents, they ask for things that will be given. I did flag that green box that one of the challenges we have found that donations to the city, you know, hey, I want to donate a bench, or I have a great idea to donate a table in a park. While on the surface it looks like that's zero cost to the city, there's maintenance. So this is one of the things we have found over time, and I will get to that in a minute. I forgot there was another slide here. There is also a difference, and this speaks to this, between expected and unexpected, and Doug alluded to this. An expected project, like we did with McCaw Hall, the city of Seattle tasked our private foundation that I worked for to go get the private money. They gave us the dollar amount. They wanted to see $72 million, and they gave us what we could name and said, go do it. Write us a check. And we did. That one was planned, right? Everybody knew what the goal was and what was going to be given in exchange. Sometimes, as I already mentioned with benches, it's unexpected. It's something that was not even on our radar that someone would like to do to honor or remember someone. So just remember there is that little difference that comes into play. As I mentioned, with the code so vague, it has led to ambiguity and differing decisions over time. And this is something this ordinance seeks to correct a little bit by adding just a little more formal guidelines. Staff respond to calls, absent clear direction from the council. It sometimes gets awkward to decline something. I mean, we have done it. The city has chosen to reject gifts with too many strings attached. But too often someone, is calling, and sometimes, especially if it's in memory of someone they just lost, it's very awkward to say, gosh, we just don't need another bench that we can maintain on Main Street. That's going to be a problem. Well, why not? I see other ones. What's your problem? My person was very special, as everyone is. So this ordinance seeks, again, to give us more guidelines, a little more structure, and a little bit more reason to decline gifts because of the ongoing maintenance. Over time, there's been a wider range. Some have been given unconditionally. I've never seen any documentation on Thompson's donation of what's now Loyalty Park. As we all know, the Ryan family gift came with a deed that is binding and restrictions that are confusing, but there. Knobloch's donation, he had some stipulations about the name, and that was about it. And that was in his will. So, and that came with an agreement. So it's been different situations across time. As I mentioned already, we have learned some lessons. There's no such thing as free. Maintenance and replacements usually well outpace the cost of the gift up front. I mentioned Timmy's bench, and the broom is actually missing right now because someone tried to pry it up so that they could go, I'm assuming, to go melt it down. Shocker to them, if they had gotten it, there's actually a broom in there. That is not solid bronze. That is a broom dipped in bronze. So there's a broom from McClendon's in the middle of that thing. But the maintenance, across the city, nothing is maintenance free. So anything comes with some maintenance on it. As we've seen, sometimes donors misunderstand the charitable giving and they feel very ownership of that piece. We've said there's sometimes a bench, if it's in memory of someone, when we move that bench, gosh, it feels like we are taking that person away from their loved ones all over again. And the emotions behind that are strong. And that's something outside the cemetery. It is just hard for the city to maintain. We have to sometimes move benches, especially if we're repaving or working on utilities underneath. We have to keep the city functioning. And so sometimes we have found that is in conflict with sometimes the intent. I will tell you, we already got a request for some sort of memorial or donation from friends, I believe, of the young man who was killed by the train over here at the Maple Crossing. I mean, again, problematic. That is an active train crossing with BNSF right away and everything. Not quite the right place for a memorial, but our current ordinance doesn't give us a whole lot to say, no, really not the best idea. We are also a city, so we want to make sure that a donation doesn't carry the perception of favoritism. Oh, well, they took their money, but they're not going to take mine. So again, just more structure for that. I will also say this is not a Sumner-specific problem. Horror stories across every fundraiser of inappropriate things asked to be etched, finding people jackhammering memorial bricks because it had their ex-spouse's name on them and they wanted it to go away. And the famous one from Safeco Field, now T-Mobile Park, the brick that said, "I voted no." So we're not alone. Everyone has to struggle with this. We actually had to have extra language, and now I understand it better. Now that I'm older, but when in McCaw Hall we did name seats, and we had to have extra language because other theaters had told us they had experienced, someone wants tickets to that sold-out show. Well, that seat's mine. It has my name on it, so I should get the ticket to that, and you should hoist out whoever bought the ticket ahead of me. And, so it just brings that expectation that you have to handle up front, which in McCaw Hall's case, we did have on all the seat donations. This does not give you access to the seat. So again, the recommendations are to use this opportunity to tighten the code, remove the ambiguity, set some uniform, fair guidelines, establish more of a process. Both for large projects and for smaller ones. In addition to the code, there is a donation policy, so we can take a look at that and see if that needs any changes or updates. As Doug already mentioned, the current code, these are the thresholds, and it's pretty silent on topics such as process and naming rights. This ordinance ups those just because a lot of time has passed, so these numbers are more in line with the intent of the original numbers when that ordinance was passed, and it adds stronger language for the city to reject a proposed donation. Naming rights, and I know this was one of the things that Deputy Mayor, you're right, this is hard, I get in the habit. Deputy Mayor Elifers particularly wanted to talk about. So I want you, as the council, still retain control of what facilities can or cannot be named. You can name any facility if you choose to rename a park, unless it violates any deed or prior agreement that is still binding with us. He also threw out the example, and I hadn't thought of this difference, the difference between something like a McCaw Hall and a T-Mobile park that used to be called Safeco Field. And I know he had some concerns about names constantly changing. And I understand that. Again, it's all in the agreements. It's all in what you set as the expectation. I believe something like McCaw Hall, that was a true gift. And I believe there was a donor agreement in place that said this lasts as long as this building exists substantially, which there were old names on the old Opera House that got removed because we were significantly renovating it into McCaw Hall. Then you have something like a Safeco Field or a Key Arena that becomes Climate Pledge Arena, or a Safeco Field that becomes T-Mobile Park. Those were strict naming agreements done not so much for charitable, but more for advertising dollars. And so those had a limited timeline. So they had, I think Safeco Field was 25 years, and now it's T-Mobile Park. And it's really hard to make the difference. I loved the Safeco Field. It was hard to see that go. Another difference next door, CenturyLink Field becoming Lumen Field. I believe, if I'm right, in that case, the company changed their name, and the company wanted their correct name on the facility. So that's the company asking the city to change the name. Fun fact, I don't know if everybody saw, but the World Cup does not allow corporate names when they reference fields. So when the World Cup is here playing in Seattle, they will refer to that as Seattle Stadium, not Lumen Field. I would not want to be the staffer who had to make the call to Lumen and let them know that. But I get off topic. Again, it comes down to those donation agreements, which this ordinance sets forth as a requirement. That outlines the conditions. Those agreements go to council for approval. And again, it's avoiding the appearance of favoritism, setting some guardrails, setting a universal moral standard that then gives people equal access. So it's the policy that says things like, we will not accept, names for alcohol, tobacco, adult-style businesses. That way, there's an even playing field, and it's not just, well, I like your business, but I don't know so much about yours. It's already outlined the things we will and will not look at. There is also a process if someone does something egregious that we do no longer want that name on our facility. And we're talking egregious. I think the name colleges are quickly removing from a lot of gifts across the country. I think that is my last slide, so questions?
Questions? Deputy Mayor Elpers.
Well, I feel obligated to say something since you guys talked to me about it. So thank you for your time. I think the presentation covered a lot of the questions that I'd had. And I think a lot of the questions, I think I spending over 10 years at the Department of Revenue, every time you got a gift, it was very much like something that you had to be really nervous about because the impression of that was always significantly ethically bad. So I think the gift and the naming and all that stuff is very interesting. I think that what I appreciate about the discussion and just like some of the information that you just went through is just how important it is for us to get grants is significant. And then I have a brick that we donated money at the YMCA, and I feel like it's clearly not my brick. If they took it down, I might be sad. But I feel like there has been quite a bit of talk in the last year about people that have been upset about that. And I think having clear boundaries on that is significant. And so, and then I'm also on the finance committee. So I think they make a lot of the decisions that are there. I think one of the things the questions I had was if there was a donation between that $5,000 and $50,000, I would like to see if there's support for the idea of making sure that the council is aware of that. I think it is nice to be notified of donations that have been made, especially if they relate to names, even if they're below that threshold, just so that we can, at least if we see somebody, we can thank them if we know the family or something like that. So to me, that notification is important. I think if it doesn't have to go through a council meeting, that's appropriate, because I think sometimes a family maybe doesn't want to make it as public or something that needs to be voted on. So that'd be the only question I'd have that was remaining, was just how we could just make sure that the council is not unaware if we get a gift for $45,000, and it sometimes is nice to be aware of that.
Anyone else? Councilmember Kenna.
I guess off Deputy Mayor's comments, can we add that in easily enough into this ordinance, or does that go back through a whole? That council gets a notice, not that we have, the decision-making authority at that stage for that dollar amount.
Well, it would be already included in the Finance Committee meeting minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be reluctant to codify something of that nature.
I see Andy jumping in, so.
Deputy Mayor Elpers.
I think one thing we had mentioned, I think last year, that I thought was really productive was just the idea that because we're on different committees, one thing we could improve going forward is just making sure that we make an effort to, and I think some of the meeting minutes are published really well, but I do think sometimes if something like that happens, I think being on a committee where something significant happens that isn't presented to council, maybe we just have to make an attempt to share that with council at our comments at the end, maybe.
Let me see. Councilmember Hochstetter.
Yeah, thank you. My question would be, so I see the limits here, and it's less than 1,000 city administrator, 1,000 to 5,000 finance committee, and above full council. Now, how is that, what's the parameters on that? What if somebody makes 2 donations of $1,000? Like, how is that handled?
Well, first off, I need to clarify, you're looking at the existing code, so.
Okay, yep.
Future code, under 5,000 would be under my authority, 5,001 to 50 under the Finance and Personnel Committee, over 50 full council. So if you have back-to-back donations in your example, let's say they make 2 $5,000 donations, I think you need to look at the timing and the intent. Is it for two separate things? They need to come with a donation agreement as well. So is it, I want to give 5,000 for this project and 5,000 for this project? Those are 2 separate donations under 2 separate donation agreements. If I want to give $10,000 to one project but split it up under payments, that is one donation agreement and it would require committee approval. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and that, like that was within 1 year, or when does, at what point, if someone makes a donation of, $49,000 1 year, does that, and then they next year make another $49,000 donation to something? Does it start every year? Where do we cap off? How we, the limit of money?
Well, once again, it goes back down to the original intent of that donation. If it's $49,000 1 year for this park and $49,000 next year for a different park, that's 2 separate different donations. If I want to give $98,000 but spread my payments over 2 years to one park, that's one donation. Okay. Now, where you could get into some trickiness, right? I give $49,000 this year to this park, Park X, and I'm not, at the time, I have no intent of coming back and giving additional money, but I come into additional funds a year or 2 later and I want to give another $49,000. We would have to treat that as 2 separate donations because the time has passed. Some of this is going to be, not entirely black and white. We're going to have to operate with the spirit of the intent. And if we think anything is weird, both the Finance Committee as well as staff and the mayor have the ability to go straight to council with it. We don't have to follow the process strictly. That is in code already, that any time those things can be elevated up. So if you get a $49,000 donation that you want to run by the full council because the Finance Committee might have some questions about it, Finance Committee can say, you know what, let's just take this straight to council for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just so for reference, this is scheduled for next Tuesday at the regular council meeting on new business because it's an ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. There is no executive session tonight, so I will adjourn this meeting at 7:41 p.m.